new topic that you will learn about in Introduction to Sociology. Now, this is a concept like many of the other ones that we've covered where you really could spend a whole semester just discussing this. If you take social theory, you probably will discuss McDonaldization a little bit more, but I'm just going to provide you with an introduction. And then after I lecture about the concept, so you don't have any reading on McDonaldization, there is one on Blackboard if you're a little confused and you want to go through it yourself. I'm just going to walk you through it to save you some time, but feel free to take a look. It's just called the McDonaldization of Society. So you should be able to find it. I think it's listed under Ritzer's name. If you're having trouble, just email me. So you're going to listen to this YouTube video, watch this lecture, and then you're going to read an article in the New Yorker called The Heroism of Incremental Care. It's published by a doctor, one of my favorite thinkers, or really he's kind of a public sociologist, even though his background isn't in sociology. So I really like his ideas, and I know a lot of you are nursing, so I thought this would be a really useful way to end the course. So make sure to read that. And then you have the very final quiz. So during the 2-week block that you're in right now, if you're watching the video immediately and not waiting, you have a quiz on parenting and success. And then the very final quiz of the class is a short one just on McDonaldization. So on this lecture and that other reading. And then remember, sociological autobiography, that is the final thing that you have to write about. You potentially could apply the concept of McDonaldization to your own life experiences. Would be a great topic to write about. Again, completely up to you. So the concept of the McDonaldization of society comes from a theorist, a sociologist who goes by the name George Ritzer. Now, George Ritzer is drawing on Max Weber. We didn't talk about Max Weber in intro. Your textbook mentioned him briefly. Max Weber is one of the 3 people associated with being a founder of sociology. So the 3 founders of sociology, really, it's Emile Durkheim, Max Weber, and W.E.B. Du Bois. So you have someone from France, someone from Germany, and then someone from the United States. They're really the 3 foundational people in sociology. And then people often talk about Karl Marx as well. His ideas are influential in sociology, but he wasn't actually a founder of the discipline, right? So Weber is one of those founders. George Ritzer takes Weber's focus on rationalization, and he looks at it in modern society, and he comes up with this idea of McDonaldization. Ritzer's also known for writing a book called Enchanting a Disenchanted World, where he looks at how consumption, our purchasing, right, how we create these spaces which seem kind of enchanted and religious, how the mall can often serve as this place that brings communities together. So he's really fascinated about the power of that, but also the drawbacks of looking at society in a way where the places we find enchantment are based around spending money. But what we're going to focus on is the McDonaldization of society. So here we have this, the main argument, the fundamental thing that he's trying to put forward in this piece is that rationalization continues today, but that the fast food restaurant is now the prototypical form or structure for society. Meaning that the principles that we see in fast food restaurants are coming to dominate more and more sectors of sections of society in the United States as well as around the world. Right, so it's not just he's going to focus on McDonald's if you do the reading, but it's looking at how those principles that made McDonald's so successfully spread into all these other areas. It could be about looking at travel, about the products you consume, the services you consume, education, leisure, politics, religion, and fast food industry too. So McDonaldization, now I'm going to introduce 4 main principles, but in general, this thing that's spreading throughout society is increasing uniformity, increasing a focus on cost control, and it's increasing the amount of regulation in society. So McDonaldization is marked by uniformity, cost control, and high regulation. And examples are everywhere, right? It could be where you buy your pet food, PetSmart. It could be at the gym, clothing stores, the mechanic, cosmetics, pretty much everything. Richard's going to argue that McDonaldization is going into virtually every area of our life, and now we're actually seeing a backlash to McDonaldization. So if we think about the local farmers market or places like that, in a sense, their response to this trend that he was arguing about. He wrote this in the early 90s. It's become even more extreme since. He's wrote a lot of updated arguments about it. So the 4 key components of McDonaldization. And again, this reading is on Blackboard if you do want to follow along. If you are following along, you can see I have the page numbers included. So he explains these 4 principles on page 337 through 338. I'm giving you an outline. I'm giving you an overview. If you want more detail, go to the actual reading. The four essential elements are efficiency, quantified and calculated, predictability, and control. These are the things that are emphasized as mattering. These are the values that are prioritized over all others. It's not that other things would be considered bad, but these are the four measures, these are the four things that show that the system is working correctly. With efficiency, what is emphasized is saying we are going to get you from point A to point B as quickly as possible. As little energy will be wasted. In this case, point A is being hungry, point B is being full. So how are we going to get the food to you as fast as possible for you to consume and move from hungry to full, right? That's what it's being measured on, speed. How can we do this? If it's slower, it means we're failing. If it's faster, it means it's good. Pretty straightforward. And now one of the things that you'll see is all four of these make a lot of sense. They're rational, right? Rational means that something is logical, that it makes sense. He's going to argue that each of these four principles make a lot of sense, but when you over-exaggerate them, the outcome is not always what you want, and you'll see that in a little bit. All right, so first one's efficiency. Second thing, quantified and calculated. Meaning, quantified means you can actually measure what you're providing. If you're thinking about fast food, right, you have specific sizes. How much meat? How big are the fries? How big is the drink that you're getting? Everything has a label where you know the exact amount, right? So you can quantify how much you're getting, and then you can calculate the cost as a result. The measure of it being a good deal is you're getting more food for the amount that you're paying. You can quantify how much food you're getting, and you can calculate the cost. You can also calculate the time, thinking back to efficiency, right? You can think of fast food places where the goal is, again, to get that thing as fast as humanly possible, or, as we're going to see, being more as fast as robotically possible, right? The more we can replace human workers, the better. That's the argument with McDonaldization. Third thing, predictability. You know exactly what you're going to get. And there's a lot of things that are predictable when you go into fast food, when you go into McDonald's. You know exactly what the menu is going to be, right? It's the same if you're getting McDonald's in New York City as if you're getting it in Brockport, as if you're getting it in Los Angeles, as if you're getting it in Toronto, Canada, as it is same as if you're getting it in Guadalajara, Mexico, and it's the same as if you're getting it in I don't know, in Paris, France, right? There's going to be little differences, but the menu's basically going to look the same, and the food is going to taste the same. If you get fries here, they're probably going to taste the exact same as if you get fries across the country. Other things are predictable as well. When you go into a McDonald's, you're never surprised by the situation. You know what it's going to basically look like. You know how you're going to order. You know how you're going to call your name after, or call the ticket number after your order, right? Everything is set up to be the exact same way. There's no surprises. There's no confusion. Fourth quality, control. This is control of both the customer and the worker. The worker, probably not surprising, right? If you've ever worked fast food, you know this. Someone who works fast food does not call themselves an artist, right? You don't have a lot of freedom. You don't have the ability to design a burger the way you want or come up with a new system in the kitchen. The system is exactly set. The more the machines can regulate the system, the better. The more that the drink size is measured or the ice cream size is measured, the more that the patties are already pre-frozen, right? Every quality that goes back to making it predictable, that makes the worker the closer to the machine, the better. You should have the exact same thing that you say to every single customer. It's not supposed to go longer. That messes with efficiency. That messes with predictability. That messes with how it can be quantified and calculated. Now, it's not just the worker, it's also the customer who's being controlled. One of the reasons that McDonald's has hard seats is because they don't want customers to sit there for too long. And this isn't some sort of random conspiracy theory, right? If we look at the argument for how to set up McDonald's, going back to the founders who came up with the principle, now I'm forgetting his name, I think Ray Kroc. This is part of the deal, right? You have hard seats because you can sit, it's effective, but then you move along, focusing on efficiency, focusing on being able to calculate the time that it takes. It's not a place to gather. It's not a place to just hang out and talk. McDonald's actually got in trouble for this. So one of the things that you've probably heard about is that famous lawsuit where there was a woman who spilled coffee on herself after getting her drink from McDonald's, ended up suing for millions of dollars. This is one of those things that we often make fun of, and we say, oh, this is an example that you can sue for everything, that we're just over eager to sue. Well, the reason that she won the lawsuit is that in the manual itself, McDonald's had the specific advice that each individual branch was supposed to keep the coffee as hot as possible, as close to boiling, as physically possible when you give it to the customer. And the reason for that is they didn't want customers to drink it there. They didn't want customers to get a coffee and sit in their stool or sit at their table and just sip or enjoy their coffee for a while. Instead, what do you do if your coffee is really hot? Well, you put it in the container and then you walk out the door, or you get in the drive-thru and you drive off. Now, the problem is that this woman, when she was drinking her coffee, the lid wasn't attached firmly. So when she drank her coffee, she actually dumped it on herself. And there's a really good documentary about this. But she had incredibly bad burns. She had to have multiple skin grafts because the coffee was boiling hot. Right, so that was the reason that McDonald's lost the lawsuit, is because it was one of their attempts to control the customer. It wasn't about the quality of the item. It was about controlling the customer. And that's one thing you should notice up here. Again, what are the things that are emphasized? The one thing that doesn't appear is the quality of the food or the variety of the food. It's about it being something that's quantified and calculated and predictable. Now, you could ask yourself, say you're taking a road trip. Maybe it's a road trip from Brockport back to New York City if you're from New York City. Or maybe you're taking a road trip from Brockport up to Toronto. I don't know. You're going across the border for some reason, going to see a concert when eventually we're able to do that again. You could ask yourself, you're driving along, right? You've got, it's a nice hot day. You have the windows down because your air conditioning isn't working that well. You're listening to your favorite music, whatever that is. And you're getting kind of hungry. And you pull over at an exit, you're going to fill up with gas, and you see two food options. You've got the McDonald's, you've got the local diner. How do you choose, right? These are probably the qualities that are going to help you with that decision. With McDonald's, you know exactly what you're going to get, you know how long it's going to take, and you know how much you're going to spend. With that diner, you don't know. The diner could be better, or it could be worse. It could be more expensive, or it could be cheaper. There's all those variabilities, right? You might have a lovely interaction with the person serving you or the person making your food, or you might have an awful interaction. With McDonald's, you know what the interaction is going to be, right? So there's less control. There's more potential excitement. There's more potential for this human connection, but you also don't know. It could be awful, right? No idea. So again, this is going to be the thing. We're moving towards more systems looking like the McDonald's and less like that local diner. Now, again, there's good qualities to this. McDonald's can provide food for lots of people. If you grew up without much money, you know that you can get to McDonald's and you can buy something for relatively cheap. It's not like you get a lot of food, but you know what it's going to be and you know what it's going to cost. It provides food in areas where other restaurants don't operate because they're simply not going to make enough money. So often in poorer communities, whether it's rural, whether it's urban, you'll find a McDonald's where you won't find other restaurants. They can exist in those spaces and actually bring food. So there are some good things that come from it, right? And we know the food at McDonald's or Taco Bell or any of these places, it's not awful. Now, you might not like it, but it's definitely not the worst thing imaginable, right? So and you actually might like some of it because some of it's been manufactured in labs to be as good as possible, to excite the various taste buds, to excite your senses. Those fries, that smell that you get in the fries, right? That's been manufactured in a lab. They know exactly how to trigger parts of your body to make you want those things. So there are some good things that come with that level of control. Now, it might be creepy when you look into the process, but there's some good things that come with that level of control. However, there's also the bad. And this is what Ritzer, and I like what Ritzer's doing here because he acknowledges there's actually good things. He's not just saying everything about modern life, everything about the McDonaldization of society is bad. Instead, he says there's some good things that come with it, but there's also something bad. He calls this the irrationality of rationality, meaning each of the principles of McDonaldization makes a lot of sense. But when you put them all together, when you push them to their extreme, suddenly the result is not as logical, right? It starts off with something that makes sense, but the ending isn't what we actually wanted. So we could think about what are some of the goals of eating, right? What is it that goes along with the idea of a meal? Why would you do this thing? Well, perhaps you do it for socialization, or not socialization, sorry, the social experience. Maybe you want to eat with your friends or your family. That's a ritual that brings you together. Maybe it's about the enjoyment of the experience, right? You're eating a new food, whether you like it or not, or maybe you're eating really good food. Maybe you're trying something you've never had before. Maybe you're going to the place that makes this food that you know that you always love. So it could be about enjoyment. Or it could just be about health. It's giving you the nutritional thing that you actually need. Now, those are the basic goals of why someone eats or why they have a meal. McDonald's, rational principles, but yet if you look at the result, well, it's not the healthiest food. We know that, that's for sure. We know it doesn't bring us the greatest enjoyment because you know exactly what you're going to get, so it's not exciting, and it's also not the best food in the world in terms of the taste. And we also know it's not the best place in terms of socialization, in terms of being social, right? It's not the place where you can sit down and enjoy and take all the time that you want, have a slow meal and just enjoy yourself, because they're designed to get you in and out. Now, you do get some health benefits, you do get calories, you do get some enjoyment, and you can be social at a McDonald's, but if not, it doesn't maximize any of those experiences, even though the steps along the way are quite rational. The result is this irrational thing. The other thing that we could think about is, in a sense, the McDonald's wants to turn both the worker and the consumer into a robot. If we think about what the goal of work might be, part of the goal of work should be finding satisfaction through being through being creative, getting to exert your creativity, getting to feel proud of this thing that you do, getting to feel like you're part of something bigger. None of those things really happen if you've worked at fast food. And as a customer, you don't really feel that either, right? So again, a lot of rational principles, but you have this irrational result. It creates this type of work that's not satisfying as a human. The goal is to turn you into a robot. And it also creates this thing that's not satisfying as a consumer. So each step makes sense, but the result takes away from the original goal and in a sense works against what makes us human. This is Richard's point with McDonaldization. Now, if we were in class, I would have you do a writing assignment. I'm not going to force you to do this, but I am asking you to reflect on this a little bit. You don't have to hand it in, but just take a few seconds, pause the video, and think about this. Can you think of another place, not fast food, not McDonald's, where you've experienced a form of McDonaldization, meaning a business, a type of activity where clearly this has become more emphasized? These are the qualities that matter. And then second, which of the 4 qualities did you recognize in this experience? And finally, what is the result of this industry having been McDonaldized? So what was your experience like? Was it good or bad? What did you think about it? So this could be thinking about a gym that you go to, could be thinking about going to the movie theaters, could be focused on the classroom, any place where you've seen McDonaldization happening. Can you think of an example of that? And then the final point that I'll make is that we can see McDonaldization happening in a ton of different places. You can see it happening in healthcare. That's what you're going to read about. In a sense, the reading that you have from the New Yorker is specifically a doctor saying, hey, in this effort to McDonaldize healthcare, we're actually missing out on what makes healthcare work. Right? So this is the argument he's going to be making. You could see it in grocery stores. You could see it in mountain climbing. I was thinking of a leisure activity. You could see it in criminal justice system. You could see it with the family. You could see it with rehab centers designed to treat drug addiction. You could see it with the way the internet is designed, the way the farming is designed, education, religion, politics, sports. Everywhere we're seeing McDonaldization. In education, it's very, very clear how it's happening, right? Think about if you want to be a teacher. Think what happens when you sit down and you say, okay, I'm going to be teaching 4th grade. How am I going to do this? Well, you have the curriculum already handed to you, right? These are the things that you need to make sure your class learns. These are the ways you're going to teach it to them. At the end, they're going to have a standardized test, right? Even if you have a passion for a subject, if you get too far off into that passion, that's actually diverting them from what needs to be done. And again, we can think of the good and bad. The good is, even if you have a bad teacher, you have that curriculum already established. They already have a system for how they're supposed to teach you. They have a deadline for when you're supposed to learn X by, when you're supposed to learn Y by, and you move along. So it means that the bar for the lowest bar isn't going to be awful. You're less likely to have someone who teaches you absolutely zero when you're in high school, when you're in grade school. However, it also hurts because it could take those people that could show you something interesting, that could do something exciting, that could use teaching and basically treat teaching as an art form. That's also controlled too, right? So with the McDonaldization of education, we see it happening all levels in terms of curriculum, in terms of lesson plans, in terms of testing. We see both the good and bad occurring. This is something that teachers really struggle with. All right, so again, final thing that I want you to do, you're going to read The Heroism of Incremental Care. Think about the argument of the article. Think about what evidence he provides. Think about how that relates to McDonaldization. Even reflect on your own experience in healthcare. And then after you do that, take that final quiz. It's a short one. Shouldn't be too hard if you do the reading. And then you are done with the course, except for the sociological autobiography. So let me know if you have questions.